clothes are much more, and what you wear, I think, are a much more stressful thing when you're younger. Because I do think that what you get with aging, there's very little positive, but what you get is a degree of kind of confidence and self-knowledge that's really, really helpful when it comes to sort of costuming, particularly for work. I did wear a faux suit very recently, and I also wore a brilliant cream top at Davos. And it's one of the reasons that I really love what you do, because I think you actually follow some of what would probably be my rules for how to deal with, dressing for work. I think, block colors, so helpful, things that go with each other but are interchangeable. So, you can make a navy suit with a cream shirt one way, but a cream shirt with a black pair of trousers can take you into evening. There are so many ways that you can mix and match those things. And I think reducing the amount of time that I have to spend, or any woman has to spend, on what I think of very much as sort of armor, is one of the most really imperative things that you can give to working women. We have, until very recently, I think, had a sort of extra hurdle that men don't have, or an extra challenge, which is that we've always tried as well, and felt pressure from society to be fashionable, and fashionable when you're younger is one of the greatest stresses, because you just don't know who you are, or what suits you or what doesn't. And then all these magazines and media telling you that you've got to be wearing, narrow trousers, and then they're wide, and then, you need a fluffy jacket, and then you need a straight. And actually, when you're young, you're incredibly impressionable, or when you're younger. And then you have to make the decision between what are clothes that you wear for home and what are clothes that you wear for work. And, I think there are really a lot of stresses and strains to add that are added on top of actually just trying to do your job. And one of the things I think that men seem to have known for quite a long time, maybe because of, the patriarchy and the many centuries that they've been out in the world, in the workplace, is that you do kind of need armor to step out and be your best. You need things that make you feel confident, or perhaps stronger, or perhaps say something about you in a particular situation, or don't say something about you in a particular situation. And so I think a lot of the thought that you need to put into what you wear is about just best expressing who you want to be, and wearing things that both make you look powerful, but also, and more importantly, feel powerful. And that's where the kind of simplicity of the sort of clothes that you make at the Fold are incredibly important. Because if you put on a suit that instantly gives you shape, that makes you feel feminine, but also strong, then you're actually doing 25% of the work that I need to do when I stand up in front of a room full of people and try and convince them of something. Well, my go-to step for a big day is to try and get some sleep. And unfortunately, obviously, the more your stress levels rise, the less likely you are to do that. So most of my rituals are all about doing everything I can to try and facilitate a good night's sleep the night before, hot bath before I go to bed, switch off my phone and my iPad and everything else. I've really embraced the Kindle quite recently. So a hot bath, Kindle in bed, try not to think about the thing I'm doing, are all things that I find very helpful. I have rituals, but they're more on a sort of weekly basis. Like I do yoga a couple of days of the week, and if I didn't, I think I'd just be all knotted up like one of those balls of twine. So I do that to just keep pulling my shoulders down and everything else. I think I've become a lot more conscious, in maturity, of trying to be nice to myself, just give myself a little bit of space, maybe not arrange everything in the day, to be 5 minutes after the last thing, so that you're constantly rushing around at speed. Just to have just a little space in your life, actually, I think is quite important. I didn't have confidence when I was younger. I had kind of chutzpah and determination, and I used that a lot. That was my fuel. But I didn't really have confidence, and I think it showed quite a lot, in the way I spoke, in how self-conscious I might have been in an interview situation, for example, where really I should have just been thinking about what the person was telling me, or you could see that I was a little bit awkward. And I just think that self-confidence actually is the most important. It's like a superpower. And as women, sadly, we often take a long, long time to develop it. And funnily enough, I look at my kids now, and I've brought them up exactly the same. They've been brought up by a feminist working mother. And yet my 18-year-old son exudes nothing but self-confidence. He's absolutely convinced that he could rule the world, no problem. Skill set's probably already developed for that. Whereas my daughter, is so much more sensitive to the vagaries of life and, being put down or being made feel small and all of those things. So really, I think, for me anyway, the most important thing has been developing that degree of confidence. And what I'd really like to see is women being able to fast forward to that a lot quicker than the 3 long decades it probably took me to get to a place where I just thought, look, I'm comfortable with myself, and therefore I'm kind of comfortable in most situations. I don't really worry like I used to about how I'm going to look, or about what I'm going to say, or about what people are going to think of me. And once those things are off the list, then actually, life can be quite sweet. The menopause mandate campaigning came about because as a feminist, as a, I hope, reasonably intelligent woman, I'd gone through all of my life. I suddenly hit 47-ish, and I had terrible insomnia, terrible, crippling anxiety that would normally manifest in the middle of the night. And, I'd wake up and then just not be able to go to sleep with kind of, nightmare scenarios flooding through my head. But they could be anything. They were so banal, some of them. It was about whether I'd done a, Tesco shop or world peace, and so on. And it took 2 years for me to be diagnosed. And only because I had the wherewithal to be able to eventually go to a private gynecologist who went, and I'd done endless blood tests and all of the things that, they offer you. And they were completely inconclusive about whether I was menopausal or not menopausal. I didn't even know that insomnia and anxiety were menopause symptoms. Now we know that there's upwards of 40 symptoms, and most of them are very obscure, and lots of women don't even get hot flushes. I didn't get hot flushes, so that, to me, that was the signature of menopause. Anyway, long story short, I was finally diagnosed and offered HRT, and it changed everything and made me feel 100% better. And I was so furious that it had taken such a long time for me, and that it was taking even longer for other women who weren't in the position I was in to go and bang the door and pay for things, that I just had to do something about it. So I made the BBC documentary after 3 years banging on their door. Amazing when you think that, most television viewers are women in their 50s and above, and yet making a program about something that will impact every single one of them was deemed to be a little bit, over adventurous, risky. And then, because we weren't able to cover everything I wanted to cover in the documentary, I then decided to write the book. And then when I wrote the book, and so many women came up to me everywhere I went, crept out of the gloaming in toilets and things and went, "Thank you so much, thank you." And I suddenly realized what a huge thing this is. It's something that's going to happen to every single woman in the world in their lives. There's no question about it, no discussion worth having about it. It's happening. And yet we know as much about it as we do about the kind of greatest depths of the ocean. That was just madness. So that's why I started campaigning with that. And then, because of the work that I did with menopause and with Menopause Mandate, I started thinking about women's working lives and how impacted we are without ever being given the space to talk about it or support by our biological clock. Not only in terms of symptoms like, terrible periods or endometriosis or, problems around fertility and then leading into menopause, all of the things, and obviously then also motherhood and parenting and raising children and how you balance that with your work. And all of those things are connected purely to our biology. And none of them are things that men have to cope with. So we're coping with this whole other world of stress at the same time as we try to play our part in the working world. And what suddenly became very clear to me, and also, there's an economic imperative that's really, really important here, which is that, if you empower and educate women and girls across the globe, you could add trillions to the global economy. I mean, there is data on it. I'm not a great tech person, but what I really do embrace is data, which we're now getting tons and tons of, because what it shows is you can't afford not to have women involved in the working world and the economy. So basically, there's the economic imperative. There is the imperative just in terms of, human rights, and then there's the fact that women end up, you end up generally with a 20% less pension pot because you've taken time out, for maternity leave. You end up going back to work and you earn up to 2/3 less than you earned before you took time out to have children. And all of those things are things that we haven't had any choice about. So instead of kind of being offered fans on desks and maybe a little bit extra leeway around bad periods and maybe allowed to come in late if you've had, bad cramps or just all those little tweaks, I decided, and I think, it's definitely the way we've got to go forward, that what we need is a female-shaped space in the working world. We need to stop tweaking centuries of patriarchy that is a linear career progression. You start at the bottom, you work your way up, you retire, and you go and play golf. I know that's cliched, but that's stereotypical, but nevertheless. For women, our journey is not like that. It goes like this. We go round and about. It's curvy. And actually, the whole world would benefit if all of the things that impact women's working lives were included in the thinking around how work works. That's why so many people of both sexes, of all genders, have embraced flexible working since the pandemic, because actually it works better for all of our lives. Joint parental leave after having a baby works better for everybody. So these aren't sort of allowances to be made for a weaker element entering the workforce. These are actually fundamental, positive changes that will change all of our lives